My 7-year-old son stood at the front of his second-grade classroom, clutching his favorite toy truck, when he said the words that would shatter our perfect suburban life forever. My daddy keeps people in the basement, so they won't tell. The silence that followed was deafening. 23 children and their teacher frozen in shock, staring at my little boy who had no idea what he'd just unleashed. Within minutes, someone dialed 911, and by the time I arrived at the school, 2 patrol cars were already in the parking lot. I'm Sarah, and this is the story of how my son's innocent revelation during show and tell exposed a truth so dark that even now, years later, I struggle to comprehend how I lived above such horror and never knew, or maybe, never wanted to know. But before we move back to it, comment down your age and where you're watching from, and if this story resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about deception, betrayal, and finding the strength to reclaim your life. The morning light filtered through our kitchen window, casting long shadows across the breakfast table where Ethan sat, swinging his legs beneath his chair. His small fingers clutched his favorite toy truck, a battered red fire engine with chipped paint and a bent ladder that he'd carried everywhere since he was 4. Today was show and tell, and he'd insisted on bringing it, despite my gentle suggestions about his newer toys. "Remember, sweetheart," I said, zipping up his jacket. "When it's your turn, just tell them about your truck. How Grandpa gave it to you, how you like to pretend you're saving people." I smoothed down his unruly brown hair, the same shade as David's, though everything else about him, his gentle nature, his quick smile, that was all me. Or so I like to think. Ethan nodded solemnly, hugging the truck to his chest. "I know, Mommy. I'll tell them good." The drive to Riverside Elementary was routine, NPR playing softly while Ethan hummed in the back seat. I caught his eye in the rearview mirror. "Nervous?" "A little," he admitted, his voice small. "What if they laugh?" "They won't laugh. And if they do, that's their problem, not yours. You're brave for sharing something you love." He seemed satisfied with that answer, returning to his humming. I pulled into the drop-off lane, leaning back to kiss his forehead. "Have a great day, buddy. Daddy will pick you up after school." "Okay, Mommy." He scrambled out, truck in hand, his backpack bouncing as he ran toward the entrance. I watched until he disappeared inside, then merged back into traffic, already mentally organizing my day, grocery shopping, the pile of laundry waiting at home, the presentation I needed to finish for tomorrow's meeting. I had no idea that in less than 2 hours, my carefully ordered world would begin to unravel. Mrs. Henderson's second-grade classroom buzzed with the particular energy of show and tell day. 23 7-year-olds sat cross-legged on the alphabet rug, wiggling with barely contained excitement. Ethan sat near the back, the truck hidden in his lap beneath his folded arms. "Who wants to go next?" Mrs. Henderson asked, her voice warm and encouraging. She'd been teaching for 15 years, had seen every kind of show and tell imaginable, from exotic vacation souvenirs to deceased goldfish in Ziploc bags. Nothing surprised her anymore. Or so she thought. Ethan's hand crept up slowly, uncertainly. "Wonderful, Ethan. Come on up." He stood, his thin shoulders hunched, and walked to the front of the room. The truck dangled from one hand. He faced his classmates, opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "Go ahead," Mrs. Henderson encouraged, settling into her chair. "Tell us about what you brought." Ethan lifted the truck slightly, then lowered it. His face had gone pale, his eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape route. The other children began to fidget, sensing his discomfort. "It's okay," Mrs. Henderson said gently. "Take your time." What happened next would replay in her mind for months afterward. Ethan straightened suddenly, as if making a decision, and the words tumbled out in a rush. "My daddy keeps people in the basement, so they won't tell." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the kindergartners next door, usually audible through the thin walls, seemed to have gone quiet. Mrs. Henderson's smile froze on her face, her mind racing to process what she'd just heard. A nervous giggle broke out from Timothy in the front row. "That's weird," he whispered to his neighbor. "Ethan," Mrs. Henderson said carefully, her teaching instincts kicking in. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Ethan shrugged, suddenly looking very small standing there alone. Daddy said, "I'm not supposed to tell. But you said we should share something important." Mrs. Henderson stood slowly, her legs feeling unsteady. "Okay, everyone, let's take an early snack break. Line up at the door." Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, too high, too bright. As the children shuffled toward the door, chattering about the unexpected treat, Mrs. Henderson placed a gentle hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Ethan, honey, I need you to come with me to the office for just a minute." "Am I in trouble?" His brown eyes filled with tears. "No, sweetheart. Not at all. We just need to talk about what you said." I was in the cereal aisle, debating between organic granola and the sugary stuff David preferred, when my phone rang. The school's number appeared on the screen, and my first thought was that Ethan was sick. He'd been fighting a cold all week. "Mrs. Taylor?" The voice was Principal Morrison's, and something in her tone made my hand tighten on the phone. "Yes? Is Ethan okay?" "He's fine, physically. But we need you to come to the school immediately. There's been an incident." "What kind of incident?" The box of cereal slipped from my hand, hitting the floor with a dull thud. "It's best if we discuss this in person. Please come as soon as you can." I abandoned my half-full cart in the middle of the aisle and ran to my car. The 10-minute drive felt like an hour. Every red light seemed personal, every slow driver a deliberate obstacle. My mind cycled through possibilities. Had Ethan hit another child? Been hit? Had there been an accident on the playground? Nothing prepared me for the 2 patrol cars parked outside the school's main entrance. My stomach dropped as I parked crookedly and stumbled toward the building. Through the glass doors, I could see uniforms. Police officers. At an elementary school. At my son's elementary school. The receptionist buzzed me in without her usual smile. "They're in the principal's office," she said quietly, not meeting my eyes. The walk down that familiar hallway, past the third-grade art projects, the trophy case, the hand-drawn posters about kindness, felt surreal. I could hear my heels clicking on the linoleum, absurdly loud in the quiet building. Principal Morrison's door was open. Inside, I saw Ethan first, sitting in a chair that was too big for him, his legs swinging the way they did when he was anxious. His truck sat on his lap. He looked up when I entered, his face brightening. "Mommy." I rushed to him, kneeling beside his chair, running my hands over his arms, his face, checking for injuries. "Are you okay? What happened?" "Mrs. Taylor." Principal Morrison's voice was carefully neutral. 2 police officers stood near her desk, one older, graying at the temples, the other younger, maybe fresh out of the academy. "Thank you for coming so quickly." I stood, keeping one hand on Ethan's shoulder. "What is this about?" The older officer stepped forward. "I'm Officer Martinez, and this is Officer Chen. Your son said something during show and tell that we need to ask about." What could a 7-year-old possibly say that requires police involvement? Officer Martinez glanced at his partner, then at Principal Morrison, who nodded. He told his class that his father keeps people in the basement so they won't tell. The words didn't make sense at first. I actually laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. That's ridiculous. He must have misunderstood something from TV or... Mommy. Ethan tugged on my sleeve. I told about Daddy's secret. Was that bad? The room seemed to tilt slightly. I sat down hard in the chair beside Ethan. "What's secret, honey?" He looked at the adults, then back at me, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The basement secret. Daddy said never to tell anyone." "Mrs. Taylor," Officer Chen said gently, "we need to ask Ethan some questions." "With your permission, of course. We have a specialist who works with children." "This is insane." I pulled Ethan closer to me. "He's 7. He makes up stories all the time. Last week, he told me there was a dragon living in our attic." "We understand," Officer Martinez said. "But we're required to follow up on statements like this. It's protocol." Protocol. The word tasted bitter. "You're treating my child like he's reporting a crime." Principal Morrison leaned forward. "Sarah, Mrs. Taylor, no one is accusing anyone of anything." But Ethan was very specific. He repeated it several times to Mrs. Henderson. "We have to take these things seriously. Daddy's going to be mad, Ethan said quietly, and something about the way he said it, the certainty, the fear, made my chest tighten. Has your husband ever told Ethan not to talk about anything? Officer Chen asked me. Of course not. I mean, normal things, don't talk to strangers, don't repeat family business at school, but nothing. I trailed off, remembering. Last month, Ethan had mentioned something about the basement at dinner, and David had cut him off sharply. What had he been saying? I couldn't remember. We'd like to speak with Ethan, Officer Martinez said. With you present, of course. And we'll need to speak with your husband as well. David's at work. I stopped, realizing I was about to say, he's a financial advisor at Preston and Associates, as if his respectable job somehow negated what's happening. I should call him. That would be a good idea, Principal Morrison said. I pulled out my phone with shaking fingers and dialed David's office number. His secretary answered on the second ring. Melissa? It's Sarah. I need to speak with David immediately. Oh, Mrs. Taylor. He's in a meeting with clients. Can I take a message?
No.
Get him.
Now.
Tell him it's an emergency with Ethan. The hold music, some generic classical piece, seemed obscenely cheerful. After what felt like forever, David's voice came on irritated. Sarah? What's wrong? Is Ethan hurt? You need to come to the school.
Right now.
I'm in the middle of a presentation. David. My voice cracked. There are police here. Silence. Then, police? Why? Something Ethan said. About the basement. Another pause, longer this time. When David spoke again, his voice was different. Controlled. I'll be right there. Don't say anything else until I arrive. He hung up before I could respond. The child specialist arrived 20 minutes later, a woman named Dr. Emily Reeves with kind eyes and a soft voice that immediately put Ethan at ease. She suggested we move to the school's resource room, which was set up like a living room with comfortable chairs and children's drawings on the walls. Ethan, she said, settling into a chair across from him while I sat beside him, I just want to talk about what you said in class today. You're not in any trouble, okay? We just want to understand. Ethan nodded, clutching his truck. Can you tell me again what you told your class? He looked at me, and I nodded encouragingly despite the ice in my veins. It's okay, sweetheart. Just tell the truth. Daddy keeps people in the basement so they won't tell, he repeated, the words coming easier this time. Dr. Reeves didn't react beyond a small nod. Can you tell me more about that? What kind of people? Ethan shrugged. I don't know. I never seen them, but I hear them sometimes. My heart stopped. Hear them? He nodded. When I'm supposed to be sleeping. Daddy says it's just the house making noises, but houses don't cry. Dr. Reeves made a note. How often do you hear these sounds? Not all the time. Sometimes. And what does the crying sound like? Ethan thought about it.
Sud.
Like when Emma fell off the swings and hurt her knee real bad. Ethan, I said, my voice strangled. Why didn't you tell me about this? He looked at me with those innocent brown eyes. Daddy said never to tell. He said it was our family secret, and if I told, bad things would happen to us. The door burst open, making us all jump. David stood there, his face flushed, Ty Askew. His eyes swept the room, taking in the officers, Dr. Reeves, me, and finally landing on Ethan. What the hell is going on here? Despite the profanity, his voice was controlled, professional. The David that clients loved, that could sell anything to anyone. Officer Martinez stood. Mr. Taylor? I'm Officer Martinez. We need to ask you some questions about statements your son made. My son is 7 years old, David said, straightening his tie. 7-year-olds say all kinds of things. Last month he told his teacher I was a secret agent. That may be true, Dr. Reeves said calmly, but the specific nature of what Ethan said requires us to follow up. The specific nature? David's laugh was harsh. This is ridiculous. My son has an active imagination, probably heard something on TV or YouTube.
Daddy.
Ethan's small voice cut through David's bluster. I told them about the basement. I'm sorry. I know you said not to, but Mrs. Henderson said we should share something important. David's face, went very still. For just a moment, so brief I might have imagined it, something flickered in his eyes. Fear?
Anger?
Then his expression smoothed back into concerned father mode. Buddy, what did you tell them about the basement? About the people, Ethan said, shrinking back slightly. There are no people in our basement, David said firmly, looking at the officers. We have a finished basement. I use part of it as a home office, and the other part is storage. That's it. Then you won't mind if we take a look? Officer Chin said. Actually, I would mind. You have no warrant, no probable cause beyond the imagination of a child. David, I said, standing. If there's nothing to hide, why not let them look? This could all be cleared up. He turned on me, and for a second, I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. You're taking their side? Against your own husband? There are no sides. Ethan said something concerning, and they need to leave us alone. He turned back to Officer Martinez. Are you charging anyone with anything?
No, sir.
Not at this time. Then we're done here. Sarah, get Ethan. We're going home. Mr. Taylor, Dr. Reeves interjected, I really think it would be best if we continued.
No.
You've traumatized my son enough for one day. He picked up Ethan, who wrapped his arms around David's neck automatically. If you have any more questions, you can direct them to my attorney. He strode out, carrying Ethan. I stood frozen for a moment, looking at the officers, the principal, Dr. Reeves. I'm sorry, I said, though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for. Then I hurried after my family. The ride home was silent except for the sound of Ethan's sniffles from the back seat. David drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. I stared out the window, trying to process what had just happened. Stop crying, David said to Ethan, his voice sharp. You're fine. David. Not now, Sarah. We pulled into our driveway, our beautiful suburban home with its manicured lawn and white picket fence. It looked so normal. It was normal, wasn't it? Inside, David set Ethan down. Go to your room. But Daddy.
Room. Now.
Ethan ran upstairs, his truck still clutched in his hand. David waited until we heard his door close, then turned on me. What were you thinking, letting them interrogate him without me there? I didn't let them do anything. I got a call, I came to the school, and the police were already there. You should have called me immediately. I did call you, after you let them fill his head with ideas, make him say things. No one made him say anything, David. He said it on his own, in front of his entire class. David ran his hands through his hair, pacing the kitchen. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. Is it? The question slipped out before I could stop it. He froze. What's that supposed to mean? I mean, why would Ethan say something like that? Where would he even get that idea? Television. Video games at his friends' houses. Who knows what kids talk about at school? He said he hears crying from the basement. Old pipes. The house settling. For God's sake, Sarah, you've lived here for 8 years. Have you ever seen anyone in our basement? I hadn't. But then again, you keep it locked. Because I have expensive equipment down there for work. My computers, client files. I'm your wife. Why can't I have a key? The question hung between us. David's jaw tightened. Because you lose everything. You lost your car keys 3 times last month alone. It was true, but it felt like deflection. David, if there's nothing down there, why not just let the police look? Clear this whole thing up. Because it's the principle. We have rights. You don't just let police ransack your home because a child said something silly. Ransack? They just wanted to look. Today they want to look. Tomorrow they're tearing apart our lives, spreading rumors. Do you know what this could do to my reputation? My career? Is that what you're worried about? Your reputation? I'm worried about our family. He slammed his hand on the counter, making me jump. I'm worried about our son being traumatized by this witch hunt. I'm worried about my wife apparently thinking I'm some kind of what? What exactly do you think is in our basement, Sarah? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because the truth was I didn't know. I never really thought about it before. The basement had always been David's domain, like the garage. I had the rest of the house. He had those spaces. It had seemed reasonable, normal. Now, standing in our sunny kitchen with its farmhouse sink and subway tile backsplash, normal felt very far away. That night, I couldn't sleep. David lay beside me, his breathing deep and even, but I knew he was awake too. We were both pretending, lying rigid in our king-sized bed, the space between us feeling like a canyon. Around midnight, I heard it, a sound from below. Soft, muffled, but distinct. It could have been pipes. It could have been the house settling. It could have been crying. I held my breath, straining to hear. There, again. A low, keening sound that raised the hair on my arms. "David," I whispered. "It's the water heater," he said immediately. "It needs to be serviced." "It sounds like..." "It's the water heater, Sarah. Go to sleep." But I couldn't. I lay there listening, and after a while, the sound stopped. Or maybe I just convinced myself it had. Near dawn, I finally dozed off, only to be woken by Ethan crawling into bed between us. "Mommy," he whispered, "am I in trouble for telling?" I pulled him close, smelling his little boy's smell of apple shampoo and something indefinably sweet. "No, baby. You're not in trouble. Daddy's mad." "Daddy's not mad at you." He told me never to tell about the basement. His voice was so small. He said if I told, we'd all have to go away. "Are we going away, Mommy?" I looked over Ethan's head at David, who was definitely awake now, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "No one's going anywhere," David said, his hand reaching over to ruffle Ethan's hair. The gesture looked affectionate, but I saw Ethan flinch slightly. "But you need to remember, Ethan, what happens in our family stays in our family. Right?" "Right, Daddy." "Good boy. Now go back to your room. It's too early to be up." After Ethan padded away, David turned to me. "We need to be united on this, Sarah. For Ethan's sake." United on what, exactly? On protecting our family from this insanity. They're going to come back. With more questions, more accusations. We need to be ready. Or we could just tell the truth. The truth. David sat up, his voice harsh in the pre-dawn quiet. "The truth is that our son made up a story, and now we're being treated like criminals. That's the only truth that matters." He got up and headed for the shower, leaving me alone in our bed. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about the basement door, about the sounds in the night, about the way Ethan had flinched from his father's touch. The truth, I was beginning to realize, was the one thing I wasn't sure we had anymore. The next afternoon, while David was at work trying to do damage control with his clients, the doorbell rang. Ethan was at school. I'd driven him myself, enduring the stares and whispers from other parents. Through the peephole, I saw Dr. Reeves and a woman in a suit. I opened the door, but didn't invite them in. "Yes. Mrs. Taylor, I'm Janet Coleman from Child Protective Services. We'd like to speak with you about Ethan." My hands gripped the doorframe. "Is this necessary?" "I'm afraid so. May we come in?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to slam the door and pretend none of this was happening. But I thought about Ethan, about the sounds in the night, about questions I'd been too afraid to ask. "Okay," I said, stepping aside. They sat in my living room, on my grandmother's sofa, looking out of place among the family photos and throw pillows. "Mrs. Taylor," Miss Coleman began, "we need to follow up on what Ethan said. Has he ever said anything similar before?" I thought carefully. He's mentioned the basement a few times. But David always redirects him. Redirects. Changes the subject. Tells him not to talk about it. Dr. Reeves leaned forward. "Sarah, may I call you Sarah? I want you to know that our primary concern is Ethan's safety and well-being. He's safe. He's fine. We're a normal family. I'm sure you are. But sometimes even normal families have secrets." The word hung in the air. Secrets. "I need to ask," Miss Coleman said, "would you consent to us viewing your basement?" David wouldn't. "I'm asking you. It's your home too." It was my home too. But the basement had never felt like mine. Even thinking about going down there without David's permission made my stomach clench. "I don't have a key," I admitted. The two women exchanged glances. Your husband keeps the basement locked and you don't have access? He has important work documents down there. Client information. And you've never been concerned about that? Of course I had been concerned. Late at night, when I heard him going down there, when he'd come back up hours later looking tired and tense. But I'd pushed those concerns down, buried them under the routines of daily life. If we got a warrant, Miss Coleman said gently, would you cooperate? Before I could answer, I heard David's car in the driveway.
He was home early.
You should go, I said quickly. But it was too late. David walked in, taking in the scene, his face darkening. Get out of my house. Mr. Taylor, Dr. Reeves started.
Get out. Now.
Or I'm calling my lawyer. They left, but not before Miss Coleman handed me her card. If you need anything, or if you remember anything else Ethan has said. I took the card, feeling David's eyes on me. After they left, he stood in the doorway, blocking my path. You let them in, into our home. They wanted to help. They want to destroy us. And you're helping them. David, if you would just let someone look in the basement, this would all go away. Would it? Or would they find some other excuse to keep investigating, to keep disrupting our lives? He moved closer, and I smelled his cologne, the same one he'd worn since we met 12 years ago. Sarah, I need you to trust me.
Can you do that?
I wanted to say yes. I wanted everything to go back to normal. Yesterday's normal. Last week's normal. But looking into my husband's eyes, I realized that normal might have been an illusion all along. That night, as I tucked Ethan into bed, he grabbed my hand. Mommy, are the people in the basement okay? My blood froze. What people, sweetheart? The ones Daddy keeps. Sometimes they cry. I want to help them, but Daddy says I can't. I smoothed his hair, my hand trembling. Ethan, have you ever seen these people? He shook his head. Daddy says I'm never allowed to look. He says if I'm good and never tell, they'll go away someday. I kissed his forehead, my lips feeling numb. Go to sleep, baby. But as I stood to leave, he whispered something that would haunt me forever. Mommy, what if they can't go away? What if they're stuck forever? I didn't have an answer. Standing in his doorway, watching my innocent son curl up with his stuffed dinosaur, I realized that the truth we'd been avoiding might be worse than any lie we'd been telling ourselves. Tomorrow, they'd be back, the police, CPS, all of them. And David would fight them every step of the way. But tonight, in the darkness of my son's room, I made a decision. I needed to know what was in our basement. Even if it destroyed everything I thought I knew about the man I'd married, the father of my child, the person I'd shared my life with for over a decade. The truth was down there, locked away in the darkness. And one way or another it was going to come out. The knock came at 7 a.m. sharp, 3 days after the show and tell incident. David was in the shower, and Ethan was still asleep. Through the peephole, I saw Miss Coleman from CPS flanked by 2 police officers. My hand hesitated on the deadbolt. David would be furious. But then I thought about Ethan's words, about the sounds in the night, about the basement door I'd never been allowed to open. I opened the door. Mrs. Taylor, Miss Coleman said, her voice professionally gentle. We need to inspect your home. We have a court order. She held out a document. I took it with numb fingers, scanning the legal language. Immediate inspection. Welfare of minor child. Reasonable suspicion. Sarah? David's voice from behind me was deadly quiet. He stood at the top of the stairs in his bathrobe, water still dripping from his hair. What are you doing? They have a court order, I said weakly. He descended the stairs slowly, each footstep deliberate. Let me see that. He snatched the paper from my hands, his eyes racing over it. This is harassment. You need a warrant. This is a child welfare inspection order, Officer Martinez said. It's not a criminal warrant. We're here to ensure Ethan's safety. My son is perfectly safe. Then you won't mind if we look around, Miss Coleman said. David's jaw worked. I could see him calculating, weighing options.
Fine.
But I'm calling my lawyer. And you're not speaking to my son without legal representation present. That's your right, Miss Coleman agreed. For now, we just need to inspect the premises. They started with the main floor, opening closets, checking windows, examining the locks. Everything was normal, cheerfully, desperately normal. Ethan's artwork on the refrigerator, family photos on the mantel, the breakfast dishes I hadn't yet washed. Ethan appeared on the stairs, rubbing his eyes. Mommy?
Who are these people?
Just some visitors, sweetheart, I said, going to him. Why don't you go get dressed? But he'd spotted Officer Martinez's uniform. His face went pale. Are they here because of what I said?
Daddy, I'm sorry.
Go to your room, Ethan, David said sharply.
Now.
Ethan fled upstairs. I started to follow, but Miss Coleman stopped me. We need to inspect the basement. David stepped in front of the basement door. My office is down there. I have confidential client information. We're not interested in your files, Mr. Taylor. Just the space itself. I need to get the key, David said. I'll come with you, Officer Chin said. David's face flushed, but he nodded. They disappeared upstairs while the rest of us waited in uncomfortable silence. I could hear my heart beating, loud as thunder in my ears. They returned, David holding a single key on a ring. His hands were steady as he unlocked the door, but I saw the muscle jumping in his jaw. The basement door swung open, revealing wooden stairs descending into darkness. David flipped a switch, and fluorescent lights flickered on below. After you, he said to Officer Martinez, his voice dripping with sarcasm. We all descended, the two officers, Miss Coleman, David, and me. I realized it was the first time in 3 years I'd been down here. When had I stopped even trying to come down? When had I accepted that this part of my own home was off-limits? The basement was ordinary. Disappointingly, confusingly ordinary. Half was set up as an office, desk, computer, filing cabinets, all meticulously organized. The other half was storage, holiday decorations, old furniture, boxes labeled in David's neat handwriting. See, David said. Nothing sinister. Just a boring suburban basement. But Officer Martinez was studying the room with a frown. It's smaller than it should be. What? David's voice was sharp. The footprint. Based on the house's exterior, this basement should extend further. He walked to the back wall, running his hand along it. This is new construction. Drywall, not the original foundation. We renovated when we moved in, David said quickly. The back section had water damage. So you walled it off? Officer Chin asked. Yes. What's behind it? Nothing.
Crawl space.
Damaged foundation. Officer Martinez knocked on the wall. The sound was hollow. There's space back there. I just told you. We'll need to access it, Miss Coleman said. You'll need to tear down a wall I paid thousands to install? David's voice rose. Absolutely not. You've done your inspection. You've seen there's nothing here. But I was staring at that wall now, remembering. We hadn't renovated when we moved in. That had been 2 years ago? 3? David had hired contractors, but only when I was at my mother's with Ethan for a week. He'd said it was a surprise, improving his office space. David, I said slowly, that renovation was recent. Not when we moved in. Everyone turned to look at me. David's eyes were dark, unreadable. You're confused, Sarah.
No.
I remember. It was 3 summers ago, when Ethan and I visited my mother in Florida. Ms. Coleman made a note. Mr. Taylor, we're going to need access to whatever is behind that wall. Get a warrant, David said flatly. We will, Officer Martinez assured him. As we climbed back upstairs, I noticed something else. A second lock on the basement door. A deadbolt I'd never seen before. When had that been installed? After they left, David cornered me in the kitchen. You contradicted me. In front of them. I told the truth. You told them what you think you remember. Memory is unreliable, Sarah. You know that.
Did I? Was he right?
The years blurred together sometimes, especially the mundane details of home improvement. Why can't I have a key to the basement? I asked suddenly. We've been over this. No, David. Really? Why? He sighed, rubbing his face. You want a key?
Fine.
I'll make you a copy today. Happy. But I wasn't happy. Because I'd seen his face when Officer Martinez mentioned the false wall. Just for a second, I'd seen fear. That night, after David had gone to bed, or pretended to, I sat in Ethan's room, watching him sleep. In the darkness, illuminated only by his nightlight, I saw papers under his bed. Drawings. I pulled them out carefully, angling them toward the dim light. My blood went cold. Stick figures in a dark room. Some lying down, some with their hands raised. And in every picture, a small figure outside the room, a little boy with brown hair.
Ethan.
One drawing showed more detail. The room had bars on a door. The figures inside had tears drawn as blue lines down their faces. At the bottom, in Ethan's shaky handwriting, Daddy's friends who can't leave. I stuffed the drawings in my pocket and crept out of his room. In the hallway, I stood at the top of the basement stairs. The new key David had given me was in my hand. He'd made a big show of presenting it at dinner, but I hadn't tried it yet. Slowly, carefully, I descended. The third step creaked. I'd have to remember that. At the bottom, I fumbled with the key. It turned smoothly in the lock. The basement was dark, but I didn't dare turn on the lights. Using my phone's flashlight, I made my way to the back wall. Up close, I could see what Officer Martinez had noticed. The drywall was newer, the paint slightly different from the rest of the room. I pressed my ear against it. Nothing. Then was that breathing? Or just my imagination? I held my breath, listening harder.
A sound.
Soft, muffled. Like someone crying very quietly, trying not to be heard. I jerked back, my phone clattering to the floor. The sound stopped immediately. I grabbed my phone and ran back upstairs, taking the steps two at a time, not caring about the creaking. In our bedroom, David appeared to be asleep. But as I slipped into bed, he spoke. "Find what you were looking for?" My heart stopped. "I don't know what you mean." "The basement, Sarah. I heard you. I was just checking. You gave me a key. And now you've checked. Satisfied?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because I wasn't satisfied. I was terrified. The next morning, David left early for work. As soon as his car disappeared around the corner, I called Miss Coleman. "I need to show you something," I said. "Ethan's drawings." And I heard something. In the basement, behind the wall. "We're working on getting a warrant to access that area," she said. "In the meantime, document everything. Take photos of the drawings. And Sarah, if you feel unsafe at any point, you and Ethan can leave." Leave? Leave my home? My marriage? After I hung up, I went to get Ethan's drawings from where I'd hidden them. But they were gone. I searched everywhere. My dresser, my closet, even the kitchen where I'd made coffee. Nothing. Looking for something? I spun around. David stood in the doorway. He was supposed to be at work. "I forgot something," I said lamely. "These?" He held up Ethan's drawings. "I found them in your jacket pocket. Interesting artwork our son's been doing." "David." "I've already discussed it with him. He won't be drawing such things anymore." "You talked to Ethan?" "When?" "This morning. Before school." But Ethan had been asleep when David left. Hadn't he? I tried to remember. Everything felt foggy, uncertain. "He understands now that his imagination was getting out of hand," David continued. "Children need boundaries, Sarah. Structure. He's been allowed to run wild with these fantasies." "Fantasies?" "David, he drew people in cages. He drew stick figures in squares. You're the one interpreting them as cages." He moved closer, and I found myself backing up until I hit the kitchen counter. "Sarah, I'm worried about you. This obsession with the basement, these paranoid thoughts. Maybe you should talk to someone. Dr. Brennan, perhaps. He helped you before." Dr. Brennan. The psychiatrist who'd treated my postpartum depression after Ethan was born. Was David suggesting I was having another breakdown? "I'm not crazy," I whispered. "Of course not," he said soothingly, the way you'd talk to a child. "You're just stressed. This whole situation has been hard on all of us. Why don't you lie down? I'll call in sick, take care of everything today." But I didn't want him to take care of everything. I was starting to realize that David taking care of everything was part of the problem. That afternoon, while David was on a conference call in his office upstairs, the doorbell rang. Our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, stood on the porch. "Sarah, dear, I hope I'm not overstepping," she said, glancing nervously at the house. "But with all the police activity lately, well, I thought you should know. We've been hearing things." "Things." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "From your house. Late at night. Sounds like crying. Sometimes shouting. George wanted to call the police weeks ago, but I said it was none of our business. But now, with what's been happening, weeks ago." My voice was faint. "Maybe months. It's hard to say. The sounds carry at night, especially in summer when windows are open." She touched my arm gently. "Dear, if you need help." "Mom," Ethan's voice from behind me. I turned to see him in the doorway, home from school. When had he gotten home? Where was David?
"Hi, sweetheart."
Mrs. Patterson was just. "Daddy says we're not supposed to talk to neighbors about family stuff," Ethan said, his voice flat, mechanical. Mrs. Patterson's face went pale. "Of course. I'll just be going." After she left, I knelt in front of Ethan. "Honey, how did you get home?" "Daddy picked me up early. He said I wasn't feeling well." "Are you sick?" He shook his head. "But Daddy said I was." David appeared at the top of the stairs. "Ethan, go to your room." "But I'm hungry."
"Room. Now."
Ethan trudged upstairs. David came down, his expression calm, but his eyes hard. "Mrs. Patterson needs to mind her own business," he said. "She said she's been hearing crying. For months." Mrs. Patterson is elderly. She probably hears her own television and gets confused. "David, what's behind that wall?" "Nothing." "Sarah, you need to stop this." "Stop what?" "Asking questions about my own home." "Stop feeding this hysteria. You're affecting Ethan. The school called today. He's been withdrawn, anxious. They're concerned." "Of course he's anxious. His father is." I stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence. "His father is what?" David's voice was dangerously quiet. Before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. Through the window, I could see police cars. Multiple police cars. David saw them too. "You called them?"
"No."
But he was already moving, heading for the basement. I heard the door slam, the lock engage. I opened the front door. Officer Martinez stood there with several other officers and Ms. Coleman. "Mrs. Taylor, we have a warrant to search the full premises, including any walled-off areas in the basement." "He's down there," I said quickly. "He locked himself in." Officer Martinez nodded to his colleagues. Two of them headed around the house. There must be another entrance I didn't know about. The others moved toward the basement door. "Mr. Taylor," Officer Martinez called. "We have a warrant." "Open the door." No response. "We're coming in one way or another, Mr. Taylor. Make this easy." Still nothing. One of the officers had tools. Within minutes, they'd removed the doorknob entirely. The door swung open. The basement was empty. "There's another way out," Officer Martinez said grimly. "Search the perimeter." But I was staring at the back wall. It had been disturbed. Fresh scratch marks on the floor showed something heavy had been moved. Part of the drywall was loose. Officer Chin pulled at the loose section. It came away, revealing not a crawl space but a door. A heavy, metal door with multiple locks. "We need to get this open," Officer Martinez said. It took them 20 minutes with power tools. When the door finally swung open, the smell hit us first. Musty, stale air. Human sweat.
Fear.
The beam of Officer Martinez's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing a narrow corridor. At the end, another door. "Stay here," he told me, but I followed anyway. The second door was locked from the outside with a padlock. They cut it easily. Inside was a small room, maybe 8 by 10 feet. A mattress on the floor, stained and worn. A bucket in the corner. Scratch marks on the walls, some of them bloody. And it was empty. "Recently vacated," Officer Chin said, examining the mattress. "This stain is still damp." That's when I saw it. Caught on a nail in the wall. A piece of fabric.
Pink. Familiar.
That's. My voice cracked. That's from a dress. A woman came to our door last month, selling something. She was wearing a pink dress. David said he sent her away. Officer Martinez bagged the fabric carefully. We need to find her husband. Now. They didn't find David that day. Or the next. An Amber Alert was issued for Ethan after I discovered some of his clothes missing from his room, along with his backpack. My son was gone, taken by a man I no longer recognized as my husband. The investigation exploded. FBI agents set up in my living room. News vans lined our street. I gave them everything, David's computer passwords, bank records, anything that might help. The man I'd loved, trusted, shared my life with, I tore apart every trace of him, searching for clues. What they found in those records chilled me. Purchases I'd never known about, locks, chains, soundproofing foam. Deliveries to the house when I'd been away. Cash withdrawals, thousands of dollars over the years, no explanation. How did I not know? I asked Agent Rivera, the lead investigator, for the 100th time. He was careful, she said. Manipulative. These types always are. These types. My husband was a type now. A category of criminal. Dr. Reeves came to the house daily, helping me understand what Ethan might have seen, heard, internalized. Children in these situations often normalize the abnormal, she explained. To Ethan, keeping people in the basement might have seemed like just another family rule, like not talking with your mouth full. But he knew it was wrong. He said they cried. Part of him knew. That's why he finally told. Despite his father's warnings, some part of Ethan knew this needed to stop. 3 days after they disappeared, my phone rang. Unknown number. Sarah. David's voice. I frantically waved at Agent Rivera, who immediately began tracing the call. David, where's Ethan? He's safe. He's with me. Please bring him home. Whatever you've done, we can work through it. His laugh was bitter. Work through it? They're calling me a monster on the news. Are you? The question escaped before I could stop it. Silence. Then, I never heard Ethan. What about the others? The people in the basement. You wouldn't understand. Then help me understand. David, please. They were going to ruin everything. Don't you see? Our life. Our perfect life. They would have destroyed it.
Who?
Who were they? But he was talking to someone else, his voice muffled. Then Ethan came on the line. Mommy, Ethan. Baby, are you okay? I'm scared. Daddy's acting weird. He keeps saying we have to hide. Ethan, listen to me. Do you know where you are? Can you see any signs, any buildings? Daddy says I can't tell. The line went dead. Agent Rivera looked at her laptop. Got a location. They're moving, but we have a 20-mile radius. The manhunt intensified. David's photo was everywhere. The basement room had yielded DNA evidence connecting it to 3 missing women from the past 5 years. 3 women who'd vanished without a trace, now potentially linked to the man I'd shared a bed with. I couldn't stay in the house. I moved to a hotel, but reporters found me there too. Everyone wanted to know how I couldn't have known, why I didn't suspect. What kind of wife doesn't notice her husband is a predator? I asked myself the same questions, lying awake in the sterile hotel bed. The signs had been there. The locked basement, the late-night sounds, Ethan's drawings. But I'd explained them all away, chosen to believe the comfortable lies rather than face the uncomfortable truths. On day 5, Mrs. Patterson called me. Sarah, I think I saw them. At the old Redmond place, the abandoned farm off Route 47. A car was there this morning, looked like David's. I should have called Agent Rivera immediately. Should have let the professionals handle it. But all I could think about was Ethan, scared and confused, wondering why Mommy hadn't saved him yet. I drove to the Redmond farm as the sun was setting. The place had been empty for years, the farmhouse slowly collapsing into itself. David's car was parked behind the barn, poorly hidden. I approached the house carefully, my phone in one hand, Agent Rivera's number ready to dial. Through a broken window, I heard voices. Can't stay here forever, buddy. David's voice, tired, strained. I want to go home. Ethan, small and miserable. We can't. Home isn't safe anymore. Because of what I said? About the basement.
Yes.
Because you told. I'm sorry, Daddy. I didn't mean to be bad. You weren't bad. You didn't understand. Sometimes grown-ups have to do hard things to protect their families. Like keeping those people locked up? My breath caught. I pressed closer to the window. They were bad people, Ethan. They wanted to hurt us. But they cried. Sometimes bad people cry too. I couldn't stand it anymore. I pushed open the door, which wasn't even locked. David spun around, his face haggard, unshaven. Ethan sat on a moldy couch, clutching his backpack. Mommy. He started to run to me, but David grabbed his arm. Stay there, Ethan. Let him go, David. I can't do that. They'll take him away. Put him in foster care. He's all I have left. That's not true. David, if you turn yourself in, if you cooperate.
What?
They'll go easy on me? I'm looking at life, Sarah. Life. What did you do? I whispered. Those women, what did you do to them? His face crumpled. I never meant for it to happen. The first one, she was going to the police. About something that happened. Something that would have ruined us. I just wanted to talk to her, make her understand. But she wouldn't listen. So you locked her up? Just until I could figure out what to do. But then I couldn't let her go. She'd tell everyone. And then there were others, and it spiraled, and I couldn't stop. Daddy, Ethan said quietly, where did the basement ladies go? David's face went white. I felt my knees buckle. Where are they, David? My voice was barely a whisper. I let them go. When I knew the police were coming, I let them go. But I saw the lie in his eyes. Agent Rivera had told me. Sociopaths were excellent liars until cornered. Then they fell apart. You didn't let them go, I said. He was silent. Daddy. Ethan's voice was scared now. You said they went away. They did, David said desperately. They went away, just like I said. But Ethan was smarter than David gave him credit for. 7 years old, and he understood, maybe not the specifics, but the weight of what wasn't being said. Did you hurt them? Ethan asked his father. David couldn't answer. That silence said everything. Ethan pulled away from his father and ran to me. This time, David didn't stop him. I held my son tight, feeling his small body shaking with sobs. I called the FBI, I said. They're already on their way. David laughed bitterly. Of course you did. Perfect Sarah. Always doing the right thing. I didn't know, I said. For years, I didn't know. You didn't want to know. It was easier to pretend everything was normal. He was right. That was the worst part, he was right. The sound of sirens filled the air. David stood, looking around the decrepit farmhouse like a trapped animal. I won't go to prison, he said. David. But he was already moving, heading for the back door. He yanked it open and ran. I heard shouting, officers ordering him to stop. Then a gunshot. I covered Ethan's ears, but it was too late. We both heard it. The single crack that ended everything and nothing. They wouldn't let me see David's body. Agent Rivera said it was better that way, better to remember him as he'd been before. But what was before? The loving husband? The doting father? Or had the monster always been there, wearing a mask I'd been too blind to see through? The investigation continued for weeks. They found the bodies of 3 women buried in the woods behind our house. 3 families got closure, if you could call it that. 3 sets of parents, siblings, children who finally knew what had happened to their loved ones. The media painted me as either a victim or an accomplice, depending on the outlet. How could she not know? They asked. Living in that house, sharing his bed, raising his child, how could she be so oblivious? I asked myself the same thing during the long nights in the hotel, holding Ethan as he cried himself to sleep. The answer was simple and terrible. I hadn't wanted to know. Every strange noise, every locked door, every odd behavior, I'd found an explanation that let me continue living my comfortable life. Ethan started therapy immediately. Dr. Reeves worked with him 3 times a week, helping him process what he'd witnessed, what he'd been forced to keep secret. Children are resilient, she told me. With support and time, he can heal from this. But at night, when Ethan woke screaming about the crying in the basement, I wondered if any of us would ever really heal. A month after David's death, we went back to the house one last time. I needed to collect our things, and Ethan's therapist thought it might help with closure. The basement had been gutted by the investigation. The false wall was gone, the hidden room empty except for evidence markers. Standing there, in the space where 3 women had suffered, I broke down completely. Mommy, Ethan's small hand slipped into mine. Are you sad about Daddy? I'm sad about everything, I admitted. Me too. He was quiet for a moment. But I'm glad I told,
even though Daddy said not to.
The basement ladies needed help. 7 years old, and he'd been braver than me. He'd spoken the truth when I'd spent years hiding from it. You did the right thing, I told him, kneeling to his level. You saved people, Ethan. You're a hero. I don't feel like a hero. I feel sad. Heroes can feel sad too. We left the house that day and never went back. I sold it to a developer who tore it down and built something new. I heard a young family moved in, with 2 kids and a dog. I hoped they'd be happy there, that the land could hold something good again. Ethan and I moved across the country, changed our names, started over. It wasn't easy. There were court dates, testimonies, ongoing investigations. But slowly, day by day, we built a new life. One night, 6 months after everything happened, Ethan asked me, "Do you think Daddy loved us?" I thought about lying, giving him something comforting to hold on to. But he'd been brave enough to tell the truth. I owed him the same. I think he loved us in the only way he knew how, I said. But sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes people who love us can still do terrible things. Like keeping people in the basement?
Yes.
Like that. He considered this. I loved Daddy. But I'm glad he can't hurt anyone anymore. Me too, baby. Me too. That night, for the first time in months, Ethan slept through without nightmares. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of our new apartment, thinking about the family we'd been and the strangers we'd actually been living with. The truth had been hiding in our basement all along, locked away in the darkness. It took a 7-year-old boy's innocent honesty to bring it into the light. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if Ethan hadn't spoken up that day at show and tell. Would the women have survived? Would there have been more victims? Would I have eventually found the courage to look behind that locked door? I'll never know. All I know is that my son saved lives with a single sentence, even as it destroyed the only life he'd ever known. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't care about the damage it causes. It just needs to be told. And finally, after years of silence and secrets, it had been. The battering ram hit the steel door with a sound like thunder. I stood in my own basement, surrounded by FBI agents and local police, watching them break into a part of my home I'd never known existed. Each blow of the ram reverberated through my chest, each crack in the door another fracture in the life I thought I'd lived. Ethan was upstairs with Dr. Reeves and a social worker. After his revelation at the farmhouse 3 days ago, before David had run, before the gunshot, he'd been in protective custody. They'd only allowed me supervised visits while they determined if I'd known, if I'd been complicit. The investigation had expanded beyond our small town. Federal agents had taken over, their presence transforming our suburban neighborhood into a crime scene. Almost through, Agent Rivera announced, stepping back as the ram swung again. The steel door finally gave way with a grinding screech. Flashlights pierced the darkness beyond, revealing a narrow concrete corridor that shouldn't exist. The house plans filed with the city showed no such space. David had built this secretly, hidden within his permitted renovation. "Mrs. Taylor, you should wait upstairs," Agent Rivera said, but I shook my head. "I need to see." She studied my face, then nodded. "Stay behind us. Don't touch anything." The corridor was maybe 3 feet wide, the walls bare concrete. The air was stale, thick with a smell I couldn't identify. Fear, maybe. Desperation. At the end, another door, this one wooden but reinforced with metal brackets. Agent Chen examined it with gloved hands. Multiple locks, all locked from the outside. He produced a bolt cutter. The locks fell away one by one. 7 locks total. Why 7? What required 7 locks to contain? The door swung open. The first thing I noticed was the bucket in the corner, the smell emanating from it making my stomach heave. Then the mattress, stained, threadbare, pushed against one wall. Scratch marks covered the walls, some fresh enough that plaster dust still clung to them. Dark stains on the concrete floor that looked like blood. Agent Chen confirmed, crouching with an evidence kit. Multiple samples, different stages of oxidation. This wasn't a one-time use. But the room was empty. Horrifyingly, thankfully empty.
Mom.
Agent Rivera's flashlight illuminated the far wall. You need to see this. Written on the wall, in what looked like fingernail scratches, were names. Jennifer, Melissa, Amy, Rachel,
Kate.
Below each name, dates. The earliest was 3 years ago. The most recent, just 2 weeks past. 5 names, I whispered. There were 5. These match our missing persons database, Agent Chen said, photographing the wall. Jennifer Morrison disappeared 3 years ago. Melissa Chun, 2 years. Amy Blackwood, 18 months. Amy Blackwood came to our door. I interrupted, memory flooding back. She was selling magazine subscriptions. David said he sent her away, but her car was still parked outside the next morning. He said she must have had car trouble, that someone must have picked her up. Agent Rivera made a note. What about the others? Do you recognize any names? I studied the scratch names, trying to connect them to faces, to moments. Rachel might have been. There was a woman named Rachel at Ethan's swimming lessons. She stopped coming suddenly. The instructor said she'd moved away. When was this? Last summer. June, maybe July. The dates on the wall matched. We need to process every inch of this room, Agent Rivera said. Mrs. Taylor, we should continue this upstairs. But I couldn't move. I stood frozen, staring at those names, imagining the women who'd scratched them into the wall. Had they heard us above? Heard Ethan playing, me cooking dinner, our normal family life continuing while they suffered below? The soundproofing, Agent Chen noted, examining the ceiling. Professional grade. They could have screamed, and you'd never know. But Ethan had known. Somehow, through David's precautions, our 7-year-old had known. As we climbed back to the main basement, Agent Rivera's phone rang. She answered, her face growing grim. They found something at the Redmond farm, she told me. Where your husband was hiding. Another room. Underground. Bodies. The word came out strangled. We need you to come identify some items. The Redmond farm looked different in daylight, swarming with investigators. The old barn had been torn partially down, revealing a hidden cellar entrance. David had been busy during his 5 days on the run, but not in the way we'd thought. He was trying to destroy evidence, Agent Rivera explained as we approached the cellar. We found accelerants, plans to burn the whole structure. If we'd been a day later. The cellar was worse than our basement. Older, damper, with chains bolted to the walls. This wasn't a recent construction. This had existed for years, maybe decades. We think this was his first location, Agent Chen said. Before he built the room in your house. The farm's been abandoned for 15 years. Perfect cover. On a rickety table were personal effects, sealed in evidence bags. Jewelry, watches, wallets. IDs. Do you recognize any of these? Agent Rivera asked. I looked through the bags, my hands shaking. A silver bracelet with a charm. I'd seen it before. Where? Then it hit me. The grocery store, I said. This woman, she helped me when Ethan was having a meltdown. Must have been 4 years ago. She had this bracelet, I remembered because the charm was unusual, a small lighthouse. She was so kind. I saw her a few times after that, but then she just wasn't there anymore. Agent Rivera checked her tablet. Sarah Hughes. Reported missing 4 years ago. She worked at the grocery store.
For years.
Before the basement room. Before the scratched names on the wall. How many? I asked. How many were there?
We're still determining that.
Some of these items go back 7 years. 7 years. Ethan hadn't even been born yet. Our marriage had seemed perfect then. We were trying for a baby. David was building his business. We'd just bought the house. There's something else, Agent Chen said carefully. We found journals. Your husband's. He documented things. I want to see them, Mrs. Taylor. I need to see them. They led me to a temporary command post set up in one of the old farm's outbuildings. Laptops and evidence boxes covered folding tables. Agent Rivera pulled out a sealed evidence bag containing leather journals. These excerpts have been photographed and transcribed, she said, handing me a tablet. Fair warning, they're disturbing. The first entry was dated 7 years ago. She wouldn't listen. Kept insisting she'd tell Sarah about the conference. About what happened. As if Sarah needs that burden. I'm protecting my family. That's what a good husband does.
Protects.
The conference. 7 years ago, David had gone to a financial planning conference in Boston. He'd come back energized, full of new ideas for the business. Had something happened there? I scrolled to another entry, this one from 4 years ago. Sarah H. recognized me at the store. Remembered the conference, remembered Hannah. Started asking questions. Wanted to know if Hannah ever contacted me again. Too risky. She follows the same routine every Tuesday, closes alone, parks in the back.
Easy.
Hannah. Who was Hannah? Another entry, from 3 years ago. Built the new room. Much better than the farm. Climate-controlled, closer monitoring. Sarah never goes in the basement anyway. Ethan knows not to talk about it. He's young enough to forget eventually. Children's memories are so malleable. My son. He'd know my son knew, and he'd counted on Ethan forgetting. Jennifer won't eat. 3 days now. May have to reconsider. But she knows about Boston, about all of them. Can't risk it. Boston, I said to Agent Rivera. Something happened at that conference in Boston. These women knew about it. She nodded. We're pulling records now. Guest lists, incident reports, everything. I kept reading, each entry more horrible than the last. David wrote about the women like they were problems to solve, logistics to manage. No emotion, no empathy. Just cold calculation. Then I found an entry from 2 weeks ago. He talked about the basement at dinner. Sarah brushed it off, but he's getting older. Harder to control. May need to relocate operations entirely. The farm is compromised anyway, developers sniffing around. Kate will be the last at the house. After her, new plans.
Kate.
The last name on the wall. 2 weeks ago. Kate, I said urgently. The last name. 2 weeks ago. If he was planning to move her. Agent Rivera was already on her phone, barking orders. Team scattered, heading back to search both properties again. The breakthrough came from the Boston conference records. Hannah Morse, 28, a financial analyst who'd attended the same conference as David 7 years ago. She'd filed a complaint with the hotel, inappropriate conduct by another attendee, later withdrawn. She'd disappeared 2 months after the conference. She was his first, Agent Rivera explained. We were in the FBI field office now, surrounded by boards covered with photos, timelines, connections. We think something happened between them at the conference. When she threatened to expose it, he silenced her. But these other women, how did they know? Social media, mostly. Sarah Hughes commented on a post about Hannah's disappearance, mentioned seeing Hannah argue with a man at the conference. Jennifer Morrison was Hannah's roommate. She'd been investigating on her own. Each woman got too close to the truth. I stared at the board, at all these women's faces. They were all professional, accomplished, the kind of women who attended financial conferences or worked in related fields. They all looked a little like me, brown hair, professional dress, similar age range. He was protecting his image, I said slowly. His perfect family man image. Dr. Reeves, who joined us for the psychological profile, nodded. Classic narcissistic behavior. The family was part of his cover, his respectability. Anything that threatened that image had to be eliminated. Including me? I thought about all the times David had suggested I was overreacting, imagining things, needed to see Dr. Brennan again. Was he planning to? We found searches on his computer, Agent Chin said gently, about inducing psychological breaks, gaslighting techniques, having someone involuntarily committed. My legs gave out. I sank into a chair. He'd been planning to have me declared insane if I got too close to the truth. Mom, Ethan's voice from the doorway. The social worker had brought him for our supervised visit. He ran to me, burying his face in my lap. Hey, baby. Are they still looking for the crying ladies? Everyone in the room went still. What crying ladies, Ethan? Dr. Reeves asked gently. The ones in the basement. Daddy said they went away, but sometimes I still heard them. When did you last hear them? Ethan thought. The night before I told at school. That's why I told. I heard one crying really loud, saying please over and over. I wanted to help her. 2 weeks ago. Kate, the last name on the wall. Agent Rivera stepped out to make a call. When she returned, her face was grim but determined. We're bringing in ground-penetrating radar. If there are remains at either property, we'll find them. The radar found them 3 days later. Not at the house. David had been too careful there. But at the Redmond farm, in a field behind the collapsed barn. 5 graves, arranged in a neat row. He'd been meticulous even in this. I wasn't allowed at the recovery site, but Agent Rivera kept me informed. Hannah Morse was identified first through dental records. Then Sarah Hughes. One by one, they found all 5 women whose names had been scratched on our basement wall. But there was a 6th grave. Older, deeper. We're running DNA now, Agent Rivera told me. But there was a locket.
Initials. Kade.
The initials nagged at me. Then, looking through old photos for the investigation, I found it. Our wedding album. David's family section. His cousin Karen, who'd moved to California 8 years ago. She'd had a falling out with David over his inheritance from their grandmother. David had said she was unstable, vindictive, threatening to spread lies about him. Karen Davidson, I told Agent Rivera. David's cousin. She threatened to contest their grandmother's will, said David had manipulated the old woman. The family sided with David. She disappeared not long after. The DNA confirmed it. David's first victim had been his own cousin. The full scope of David's crimes took weeks to unravel. The FBI found correspondence on his computer, encrypted files detailing his projects, his term for the women he'd held. He documented everything with the same meticulous attention he gave to his financial planning business. But there was another discovery, one that shattered what little remained of my world. Agent Rivera called me in, her face more serious than usual. We found a safe deposit box. David had it under another name. Inside were documents, photos, and a confession of sorts. She handed me a letter, dated a week before Ethan's show and tell. Asterisk if you're reading this, something has gone wrong. The boy talked, probably. I knew he would eventually. Too much like his mother, unable to leave well enough alone. Sarah will paint herself as ignorant, innocent. She's very good at that. But she knew. Maybe not the specifics, but she knew something was wrong. She chose comfort over truth. Every time she didn't question the locked door, every time she ignored the sounds, every time she accepted my explanations, she chose. The women were necessary. They threatened our life, our reputation, our family. I did what I had to do to protect what we built. Sarah benefited from that protection. She lived in the nice house, enjoyed the successful husband, raised our son in safety and comfort. The price for that life was paid by others, but she never complained about the currency. If I'm gone, if I'm caught, she'll play the victim. Let her. But know this, there are no innocent parties in a marriage. There are only those who act and those who allow. Asterisk. It's manipulation, Agent Rivera said as I finished reading. Classic attempt to shift blame. But the words burrowed under my skin. Because wasn't there truth in them? Every locked door I didn't question, every strange noise I explained away, every red flag I ignored. Weren't those choices? I need to see Ethan, I said. They finally allowed me unsupervised time with my son. We sat in a park near the FBI office, watching other children play. Ethan was quiet, too quiet for a 7-year-old. Dr. Reeves says you've been very brave, I said. I don't feel brave. I feel sad. Why, baby? Because Daddy was bad, but he was also Daddy. Is it okay to miss bad people? I pulled him close. It's okay to miss the good parts of someone even if they did bad things. Did you know? About the crying ladies? The question I'd been dreading. I could lie, preserve his image of me. Or I could give him the truth he'd been brave enough to speak. I didn't know, I said carefully. But I should have tried harder to find out. I should have asked more questions. Why didn't you? Because I was scared of the answers. He considered this. I was scared too. But the crying was scarier than telling. 7 years old, and he understood what I'd spent years avoiding, that ignoring suffering was worse than confronting uncomfortable truths. The investigation continued for months. More evidence emerged. David had been planning to expand his operations. He'd been in contact with others online, men who shared his particular worldview about protection and control. The FBI uncovered a network, triggered more investigations in other states. I testified in closed hearings, answered the same questions hundreds of times. How did I not know? How did I not see? The answer was always the same. I didn't want to. The families of the victims were kind, mostly. They didn't blame me, they said. But I saw the question in their eyes. How could a wife, a mother, be so blind? Jennifer Morrison's mother hugged me at one of the hearings, whispered, "Your boy saved others. Remember that." Because that was the one truth that mattered. Ethan's courage had ended David's crimes. Where I had failed, my 7-year-old had succeeded. We entered witness protection eventually, not because of threats, but because of the media attention. David Taylor's wife, the woman who didn't know. We needed new names, new lives, a fresh start. The night before we left, I went back to the house one last time. It was empty, stripped of evidence and memories alike. I stood in the basement, in front of where the false wall had been. The hidden room was gone, filled with concrete, but I could still feel it there. The weight of those women suffering, their scratched names like accusations. "I'm sorry," I said to the empty space. "I'm sorry I didn't look. I'm sorry I didn't listen. I'm sorry I chose comfort over truth." There was no absolution in the silence that answered. 6 months later, in our new city, with our new names, Ethan started 3rd grade. His teacher called me in for a conference. "He wrote something for our creative writing assignment," she said, concerned. "About his father. I think you should see it." My heart sank. We'd been in therapy, both of us. I thought we were making progress. The teacher handed me his paper. My dad did bad things. He hurt people and hid them so nobody would know. I told the truth even though I was scared. My mom says I'm brave. But I think she's brave too, because she had to learn that someone she loved could be bad. That's harder than telling the truth. Telling the truth just takes 1 minute. Learning to see the truth takes much longer. The teacher was watching me. Should I be concerned? "No," I said, wiping my eyes. "He's just processing. He's in therapy. He seems like a remarkable boy." He is. He's the bravest person I know. That night, I tucked Ethan into bed in our new home, a small apartment, nothing like the house we'd had. No basement. That had been our one requirement. "Your teacher showed me your story," I said. "Are you mad?" "No, baby. You wrote the truth. Dr. Reeves says the truth is important, even when it hurts." She's right. He was quiet for a moment. "Mom, do you think Daddy ever loved us? Like, really loved us?" I thought about David's journals, his meticulous planning, his cold calculations. Then I thought about other moments, teaching Ethan to ride a bike, family dinners, bedtime stories. Were those real, or just part of his performance? "I think he loved us the only way he knew how," I said finally. "But sometimes people's love is broken. It doesn't work right, and broken love can be dangerous." Like the basement.
Yes.
Like the basement. Ethan curled into his pillow. "I'm glad we don't have a basement anymore." "Me too." As he drifted off to sleep, I stood by his window, looking out at our new neighborhood. Somewhere, investigators were still uncovering the full extent of David's crimes. Somewhere, families were still grieving. And somewhere, perhaps, other women were trapped in basements, waiting for someone brave enough to tell the truth. I couldn't change what I'd failed to see. But I could raise my son to be different, to ask questions, to trust his instincts, to speak truth even when it was dangerous. The past was buried, but not gone. It lived in the scratch marks of desperate women, in the nightmares that still woke us both, in the knowledge that the person you trust most can be the greatest danger of all. But it also lived in Ethan's courage, in the lives he'd saved by speaking 7 simple words. My daddy keeps people in the basement. Those words had destroyed our family. And they had saved us too. The call came at 3 a.m., 6 months after David's death. I'd finally stopped jumping at every phone ring, finally stopped checking the locks 3 times before bed. Ethan and I had settled into our new lives under our new names, in a city where nobody knew our story. Sarah Taylor? The voice was unfamiliar, male. My blood froze. Nobody should know that name anymore. Who is this? My name is Marcus Webb. I was a friend of your husband's. I sat up, instantly alert. David didn't have friends named Marcus. A low chuckle. No, I suppose he wouldn't have mentioned me.
We met online.
We had similar interests. My hand shook as I reached for the panic button the FBI had given me. What do you want? Your husband left something unfinished. Something important. I thought you should know. The work continues. The line went dead. I hit the panic button and grabbed Ethan from his bed, carrying his sleepy form to the bathroom, the only room without windows. Within minutes, local police were at our door, followed by FBI agents within the hour. Marcus Webb is real, Agent Rivera told me by sunrise. She'd flown in immediately. We've been tracking him. He was part of David's online network. We think he might have been David's mentor. Mentor? The word tasted bitter. In what, exactly? In the philosophy that some men are protectors, that they have the right, the duty, to control threats to their family structure. Even if those threats are imaginary. Even if that control means imprisonment, murder. Yes.
They moved us again that day.
Another city, another name. But 3 weeks later, Marcus found us again. This time, it was a letter to Ethan's school, addressed to his fake name. Your father was a visionary. Someday you'll understand. The protected can never appreciate the protector's sacrifice. The school went into lockdown. Ethan was traumatized all over again. He'd been doing so well, making friends, sleeping through the night. Now the nightmares returned with a vengeance. Why won't they leave us alone? He asked, curled in my lap. Daddy's gone. The basement ladies are free. Why isn't it over? I didn't have an answer. Evil, I was learning, didn't die with one man. It had roots, branches, a whole poisonous tree of people who thought like David had. Agent Rivera assigned us a full-time protection detail. 2 agents, rotating shifts, always watching. It felt like another kind of prison, but at least we were together. The investigation into David's network expanded. They found forums, encrypted chat rooms, men sharing strategies for control and containment. David had been something of a celebrity among them, successful, careful, undetected for years. His journals were being traded like instruction manuals. We need your help, Agent Rivera said. You knew David better than anyone. These men, they're copying his methods, but they're making mistakes. We need to understand his psychology to catch them. So I became part of the investigation, reading through evidence, identifying patterns. It was torture, seeing my life with David through this new lens. Every vacation we'd taken. Had he met with these men? Every business trip. Was it really business? One name kept appearing, the architect. It was Marcus Webb's screen name, and he'd been the one encouraging David to expand, to build better containment, to protect more efficiently. He's in your area, Agent Rivera told me one day. We've tracked his IP address. He's been watching you. For how long? We think, since before David died. He was David's backup plan. The room spun. backup plan. In case David was caught. Someone to continue his work. And to ensure silence. That night, I sat up with a baseball bat, despite the agents outside. Ethan slept in my bed, clutching his old toy truck, the one he'd brought to show and tell that day that changed everything. "Mommy," he whispered in the darkness, "what if there are more daddies out there? More basements?" "That's why we told the truth," I said. "So people could find them, stop them." "But what if they find us first?" Before I could answer, the power went out. The next few minutes were chaos. The agents burst in, flashlights cutting through darkness. "We need to move.
Now."
They bundled us into a car, speeding through empty streets. Behind us, I saw flames. Our safe house was burning. "He's escalating," Agent Rivera said over the phone. "We're moving you to a federal facility. Maximum security." The facility was a converted military base, all concrete and barbed wire. Other families in witness protection were there, all women and children, I noticed. All hiding from dangerous men. Ethan made friends with another boy whose father had been a cartel member. They played together in the supervised yard, 2 children bearing the weight of their father's crimes. "It's not fair," the other mother, Maria, said to me. "They do terrible things and we pay the price." "Our children pay the price," I corrected. She nodded. "My son still loves his father. Still asks when he's coming home." "What do you tell him?" "The truth. That love doesn't erase crimes. That some choices can't be undone." 2 weeks into our stay at the facility, they caught Marcus Webb. He'd made a mistake, tried to grab another woman, but she'd fought back, escaped, called police. They found his house, his basement, his own version of David's design, but sloppier, more violent. They also found his manifesto, dedicated to David. "He calls your husband a martyr," Agent Rivera told me. "Says he died protecting his family's honor." "Can I see it?" "Are you sure?" I nodded. I needed to understand this sickness, this twisted logic that turned protection into predation. The manifesto was 200 pages of rage disguised as philosophy. Women who threatened the social order. Men who were brave enough to contain the chaos. David featured prominently, the perfect family man, the successful protector, brought down by a treacherous wife and a corrupted child. That's what Marcus called Ethan. Corrupted. He planned to take Ethan, Agent Rivera said quietly. Raise him correctly. Continue David's legacy. I vomited then, right there in the FBI conference room. The thought of that man near my son, correcting him, teaching him David's poisonous worldview. "He'll never get near you," Agent Rivera promised. "He's looking at life without parole." But there were others. The forums had thousands of members. How many had basements? How many had wives who didn't ask questions? The trial was closed to media, but I testified. So did Ethan, via video link, brave and clear-voiced as he described what he'd heard, what he'd seen, what his father had told him. Marcus Webb sat at the defense table, ordinary-looking, someone you'd pass at the grocery store without a second glance. Like David. Like all of them, probably. Monsters wearing suburban camouflage. When they played the recording of the 911 call from Ethan's school, after his show and tell revelation, Marcus actually smiled. Like it was a fond memory. The prosecutor asked me the question everyone wanted answered. How did you not know? I think I did know, I admitted, the words scraping my throat. Not the specifics. But I knew something was wrong. I chose not to look closer, because looking would have destroyed my life. I didn't realize my life was already destroyed, just decorated nicely. Marcus was convicted on all counts. As they led him away, he called out, "David was right about you. You're weak. Your son deserved a better mother." Maybe he was right. But Ethan had something more important than a perfect mother. He had the truth. And the courage to speak it. After the trial, the FBI offered us permanent relocation. New identities, so deep even they wouldn't be able to trace us. A complete erasure of Sarah and Ethan Taylor. What about the other families? I asked. The victims' families? They'll be told you're safe. That's all. We were given a week to decide. That night, Ethan crawled into my bed again. If we become new people, he asked, do we forget the old ones? Never, I promised. We carry them with us. The good and the bad. I don't want to forget Daddy. The good parts, I mean. When he taught me to ride my bike. When he read me stories. Those moments were real, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure. You can keep those. But the basement was real too. Yes. How do I carry both? 8 years old now, and asking questions most adults couldn't answer. Very carefully, I said. And with help. We'll always have help. The next morning, I told Agent Rivera we'd take the relocation. Complete erasure. A third life, hopefully our last. But first, there was something I needed to do. The courtroom was packed for David's posthumous trial, a legal proceeding to officially close the cases of his victims, to give their families the closure of a verdict even though the defendant was dead. I sat in the witness box for the final time, looking out at the faces of those who'd lost daughters, sisters, friends. Mrs. Taylor, the prosecutor began, you've heard all the evidence against your late husband. 23 counts of kidnapping. 8 counts of murder. Do you have anything you'd like to say to the families? I'd prepared a speech. Practiced it. But looking at their faces, Jennifer Morrison's parents, elderly and broken, Sarah Hughes' teenage daughter, who'd grown up without her mother, Hannah Morse's fiancé, still wearing his engagement ring 4 years later, the prepared words crumbled. I failed you, I said simply. I lived above your daughter's suffering and chose not to hear it. I benefited from their silence. I can say I didn't know, but I should have known. A wife should know. A mother should protect. I did neither. Jennifer's mother stood up. The bailiff moved toward her, but the judge waved him back. My daughter wrote about him, she said, her voice shaking. In her journal. Said she'd met someone at a conference who gave her bad feelings. Said he reminded her of the men we warn each other about. But she had no proof, just instinct. She looked directly at me. You lived with him. You had more than instinct. You had opportunity. Yes, I agreed. I had opportunity. Then why? The word came out as a wail. Why didn't you look? Because I was a coward. Because I valued my comfort over the truth. Because I told myself that not knowing was the same as innocence. I met her eyes. It wasn't. It never is. She sat back down, sobbing into her husband's shoulder. Amy Blackwood's sister went next. She came to your house. Knocked on your door. You probably gave her a smile, maybe offered her water. Did you notice when she didn't leave? Her car, I said, remembering. It was there the next morning. David said she'd had trouble, that someone must have picked her up. I believed him. You wanted to believe him. Yes. One by one, they spoke. Not questions, just statements. Grief and rage and bewilderment that their loved ones had been beneath my feet, behind my walls, and I'd never known. Never tried to know. Ethan wasn't in the courtroom. He was with Dr. Reeves, but his statement was read aloud. The room went silent as the prosecutor read his childish handwriting. I knew something was wrong. I heard the crying. I told Daddy I wanted to help them, but he said they were bad people who wanted to hurt our family. I believed him because he was Daddy. But then I heard them saying please. Bad people don't say please like that. All sad and scared. So I told at school even though Daddy said never tell. I'm sorry. I didn't tell sooner. I was scared Daddy would be mad. I was scared the crying ladies would get in trouble. I was scared of being a tattletale. But being scared made them stay in the basement longer. I'm sorry for being scared. Several jurors were crying by the end. The judge, an elderly woman with piercing eyes, looked at me. Mrs. Taylor, your son shows more moral courage at 8 than many adults ever achieve. Make sure he knows that. I will. As for you. She paused, choosing her words carefully. You were not charged with any crime because ignorance, even willful ignorance, is not criminal. But I hope you understand that legal innocence and moral innocence are different things. I understand. The court officially finds David Taylor guilty on all counts, posthumously. The families may now pursue civil claims against his estate. She banged her gavel. Court dismissed. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Agent Rivera and her team formed a shield, rushing us to a waiting car. But I caught sight of something that made me stop. A woman, standing apart from the crowd. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. Then she held up a sign. "Thank you, Ethan." "Wait," I told Rivera. "Who is that?" Rivera checked her notes. Kate Williams. The last victim. The one whose name was most recent on the wall.
Kate.
The crying Ethan had heard the night before he told. "She's alive." David released her when he knew the police were coming. She was found wandering on a highway, dehydrated but alive. She doesn't remember much, trauma response, but she knows Ethan saved her life. I broke away from the agents, approaching Kate. Up close, I could see the healing bruises, the haunted eyes. "Your son," she said, voice hoarse. I heard him sometimes, talking to his father, asking about the crying. He kept asking. It gave me hope that someone knew, someone cared. "I'm sorry," I said, the words pathetically inadequate. "I'm so sorry." "I don't blame you," she said, though her eyes said differently. "But I thank your son. Every day, I thank him." She walked away, and I never saw her again. 3 weeks later, we disappeared. Sarah and Ethan Taylor ceased to exist. In a small town in the Midwest, Emma and James Coleman started their new lives. I became a librarian. Ethan James joined Little League. We had dinner at 6 p.m. every night in our house with no basement, just a crawl space too small to stand in. The first few months were hard. Ethan had nightmares about Daddy finding us, about new basements, about the crying ladies. I had nightmares too, about all the questions I hadn't asked, the doors I hadn't opened, the sounds I'd explained away. But slowly, carefully, we built something new. Not a perfect life. We'd learned the danger of perfection, but an honest one. Ethan's new teacher called me in after the first month of school. "James wrote something unusual for our family history project," she said, showing me his paper.
"My family is complicated.
My mom and I had to start over because of something bad that happened. I can't tell you what because it's a secret for safety. But I can tell you this. My mom is brave because she learned to see the truth even when it hurt. And I'm brave because I told the truth even when I was scared. We're a small family now, just 2 people, but we're honest. That's better than being a big family with secrets." "Is everything okay at home?" the teacher asked, concerned. "We're working on it," I said. "We've been through some trauma. He's in therapy." She nodded, accepting the vague explanation. Small towns were good that way. They respected privacy while offering support.
A year passed.
Then, too, the nightmares faded to occasional bad dreams. Ethan made friends, joined clubs, became a normal kid who happened to have an unusual past. We never spoke of David as his father anymore. He became, the man before, a shadow we acknowledged but didn't let define us. On the 3rd anniversary of the show and tell incident, Ethan, now 11, asked if we could do something to remember. Remember what? I asked, though I knew. The day I told. The day everything changed. We lit 8 candles that night, one for each woman David had hurt, including Kate, who survived. Ethan said their names, which he'd memorized from the court documents I'd finally let him read. "Do you think they forgive us?" he asked. "I don't know if they forgive me," I said. "But you don't need forgiveness. You need recognition. You did what I couldn't do, you saved them. But not all of them. Some were already gone. You saved the ones who would have come after. There would have been more, Ethan. You stopped that." He considered this. "Do you think there are other kids like me? Who know something's wrong but are scared to tell?" "Probably. I wish I could tell them it's okay to be scared but to tell anyway." That gave me an idea. We worked with the FBI to create a program, anonymous, of course. Videos for schools about recognizing danger, speaking up, trusting your instincts. Ethan's voice was altered, his face never shone, but his words were his own. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones doing bad things. Sometimes home doesn't feel safe even though it looks nice. If you know something is wrong, even if someone tells you not to tell, even if you're scared, Even if you love the person doing bad things, tell someone. Tell a teacher, a police officer, a friend's parent. Keep telling until someone listens. Your words might save someone. They saved people for me. The program launched in schools across the country. Within the first year, it led to dozens of investigations, several arrests, and countless children getting help. Agent Rivera called to update us periodically. Marcus Webb had been killed in prison. The other inmates didn't take kindly to his crimes. The online network had been largely dismantled, though new ones always emerged. Several wives had come forward after hearing about our case, admitting they'd suspected something in their own basements, their own locked rooms. You started something, Rivera told me. By letting Ethan speak at the trial, by being honest about your willful ignorance, other women are examining their own blind spots. It wasn't redemption. Nothing could redeem my years of chosen blindness. But maybe it was something else, prevention. If one wife looked at a locked door and demanded a key, if one child spoke up about something that felt wrong, then maybe our story served a purpose beyond its horror. Ethan started high school as James Coleman, a normal kid with good grades and a spot on the debate team. His teacher praised his persuasive speaking, never knowing it came from years of therapy teaching him to articulate difficult truths. One day, he came home with an assignment about heroes. "I want to write about you," he said. "I'm not a hero, Ethan. We've talked about this." "No, but you're something else. You're someone who messed up really bad but admitted it and tried to fix it. That's not a hero, but it's important." He wrote his essay about the courage to confront uncomfortable truths, to admit complicity, to rebuild after devastation. He never mentioned our real story, but the theme was clear. Sometimes the hardest battle is against your own willful blindness. He got an A. The last time I heard from anyone connected to our old life was Ethan's 18th birthday. A card arrived with no return address, forwarded through the FBI. Inside, in shaky handwriting, "Thank you for raising a brave son. The families." I gave it to Ethan. He read it, nodded once, and tucked it into his memory box, the place where he kept his old toy truck, the one from show and tell, and a photo of our old house, carefully cropped to exclude the basement door. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked him. Telling. "Never," he said immediately. "Do you ever regret not looking sooner?" "Every day." "Good," he said, and I knew he meant it. Not cruelly, but honestly. Some regrets should be carried forever, not as punishment, but as reminder. That night, I stood in our basement-free home, looking at my son, taller than me now, headed to college in the fall, planning to study criminal justice with a focus on victim advocacy. He'd taken our tragedy and transformed it into purpose. "I love you," I told him. "And I'm proud of you." "I know," he said. "I love you too. Even the parts that failed. Maybe especially those parts, because you admitted them." The story should end there, with forgiveness and growth. But real stories don't end cleanly. Last week, clearing out the attic for Ethan's graduation party, I found a box I'd forgotten. Inside were David's things I'd grabbed in those chaotic days, his watch, some papers, a photo album. I almost threw it all away, but something made me look through it one last time. Behind one photo was a folded paper. Another page from his journal, one the FBI had missed. Sarah asked about the basement again today. I told her it was for her own good that she didn't have a key. She accepted it, as she always does. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if she insisted, if she fought me on it. Would I have to?
No.
Sarah knows her role. She's smart enough not to look where she shouldn't. That's why I chose her. That's why she's safe. That's why she's safe. I'd been one locked door away from being in that basement myself. I burned the paper, watching David's words turn to ash. Then I called Ethan. "I found something," I said. "From before. From him. Do I need to know?"
No.
"But I needed to tell you it existed, and that I destroyed it. No more secrets, even small ones." "Okay. Thanks for telling me." We'd built our new life on radical honesty, on speaking every difficult truth. It wasn't comfortable, but comfort was what had allowed David to operate for so long. Discomfort, we'd learned, was the price of safety. The graduation party was beautiful. Ethan gave a speech about overcoming adversity, about the power of truth, about the importance of listening when someone, especially a child, says something is wrong. The other parents applauded, not knowing the weight behind his words. That night, after everyone left, we sat on the porch of our basement-free home. "What now?" I asked. "Now we keep going," Ethan said. "We keep telling the truth. We keep watching for signs. We keep speaking up. Even when it's hard? Especially when it's hard. That's the only time it really matters." He was right, of course. My 18-year-old son, who'd saved lives at 7, understood what I'd taken decades to learn. The truth doesn't care about your comfort, your reputation, or your carefully constructed life. It just needs to be told. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very brave, telling it can save everyone, even the ones who are too afraid to look for it themselves. The basement is gone. The house is gone. David is gone. But Ethan's words that day at show and tell remain, echoing through courtrooms and classrooms, through the nightmares of those who survived and the gratitude of those who were saved. My daddy keeps people in the basement so they won't tell. 7 words from a 7-year-old that destroyed a lie and saved lives. That's the final truth. That's what we carry forward. If your child told you something that seemed impossible about someone you loved, would you have the courage to investigate, or would you explain it away to preserve your comfortable life? Like and subscribe for more stories about the truths we choose not to see.